Welcome and thank you for standing by. All lines have been placed in a listen-only mode for today's presentation. The call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I will now introduce your conference host, Ms. Deborah Rivera. You may begin.
Great. Thank you so much. Welcome and good afternoon. First of all, a big thank you to everyone who's joined us for today's webinar event on custom tabulation capabilities on data.census.gov. In today's training session, participants will learn how to use the Census Bureau's Microdata Access tool on data.census.gov to create custom tabulations using various available public use microdata sets and vintages. My name is Deborah Rivera, and joining me today is my colleague Jessica Barnett, and together we will be providing support to our speaker by monitoring the chat and sending you helpful links and answering any questions that we can in the chat. So before I hand things off to our presenter, Tyson Weister, let's go ahead and go over some of the housekeeping items. The focus of today's session is creating custom tabulations using data.census.gov, and that is the topic of today's training. We will not be covering navigation of the main data platform or decennial census data releases. Now, we understand that these topics garner a significant amount of interest. So if you do have questions of that nature, we kindly ask that you send us an email, and that will allow us to better assist you with your inquiry. So we will go ahead and send that email address via the chat throughout the webinar. Otherwise, we will not be able to address questions that are not within the scope of today's topic during the live Q&A session or via the chat. Now moving on, and this is important, if you have chosen to stream the audio of today's call via your computer, you will not be able to queue up to ask questions via the phone line during the Q&A period. So if you would like to ask a question via the phone, we encourage you to dial in with the telephone number and the passcode provided. And I do believe that is in the chat, so we'll go ahead and send that out again just in case. But please know that due to the high volume of questions that we typically receive in the chat, we may not be able to address every message that comes through. So again, we encourage you to submit questions and feedback to us if we are unable to respond to you during the webinar. As always, we are recording this webinar, and the slide deck and the recording will all be posted on the Census Academy site. So please keep an eye out for that link in the chat. And with that, once again, thank you so much for joining us today. We are very happy to have you here, and we hope you enjoy the training. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Tyson Weister. Thank you, Tyson.
Great. Thanks, Deb, and thank you all for tuning in on today's webinar, Custom Tabulation Capabilities on data.census.gov. For today, we are going to open up with some basics about using microdata and the microdata access on data.census.gov. Once we've covered some basic background information, we'll go ahead and devote a large chunk of today's webinar to the live demonstration. We're going to walk through 3 different examples, and those examples are going to touch on a variety of different ways of creating custom tables on the data.census.gov MDAT and different functionality that you'll need to know in a variety of situations. And then we'll open it up for questions. So when we say microdata access, we are referring to the tool on data.census.gov/MDAT. This is a tool that allows you to create special tabulations to make custom tables using Census public use microdata without having to rely on downloading large files, doing programming, and using your own statistical software. We make it easy so you can do this for free right on our site. With that said, we do only recommend using this tool if you're unable to find a pre-made table that already has this data for you. We'll talk more about that. Going hand in hand with this, one of the limitations of using microdata is that while it allows you a lot of flexibility to create custom tables, it is only available for large geographies like states and sometimes statistical areas called public use microdata areas We'll talk more about that in just a moment as well. And you're allowed to create tables on a variable level. So having knowledge of different surveys and programs, in particular their data dictionaries, is always helpful to have those definitions up front. So we'll show you some ways on the site how you can look up information about variable directly on our site, but we do always recommend using that other technical documentation provided by the individual surveys and programs. So what is public use microdata? When we say public use microdata, that's when we take a set of responses from a survey or program. We remove information so you can't identify any particular person or household. We put additional edits to protect the confidentiality of respondents. And then we give you that set of data for you to create your own custom tables. So when we say public use, we're referring to the fact that they are anonymized. Again, we've removed personally identifiable information, and we put additional edits, such as top and bottom coding in place that help protect the confidentiality of respondents. Public use also means it's accessible. You can, again, use the downloaded files through the file transfer protocol site and work with these files in your own statistical software, or you can also use the free microdata access tool on data.census.gov. This tool is powered by the application programming interface, which means it's also accessible to you through the API. And it comes with a free suite of educational materials and technical documentation to help you work with these files. The microdata side of public use microdata just means that they are individual responses. You must tabulate and weight these data on your own. Another way of looking at this is to look at the output itself. So in terms of the tabulated data, sometimes referred to as aggregated data or pre-made tables, you see an example of this on the left-hand side of the screen. This is a screenshot from data.census.gov. In here, you're looking at a table that provides occupation broken out by males, and we can see a particular line item shows that in 2016 in Louisiana, there were approximately 18,459 males who worked in computer and mathematical occupations. In comparison, when you're talking about microdata, you're looking at a set of individual responses. So here we see a small portion of the microdata for this particular survey and program. When you look at the line highlighted here, we can see that this particular response shows state code 22. The response comes from someone in Louisiana. Sex code 1, the response comes from a male. And occupation code 1030, which corresponds to web developer. When you're looking at microdata, it involves taking all of the set of responses, aggregating and weighting and tabulating the data in order to create a table that gives you estimates that reflect the total population. In the upper left, when you're looking at the pre-made tables on data.census.gov, our statisticians and mathematicians at the Census Bureau have already gone through that work with the internal set of responses to create those tables for you. When you're working with microdata, you'll be doing this process on your own. The good news is that we do make it easy with microdata access. Right now on NDAT, we have the American Community Survey, public use microdata sample, and you can look on the left-hand side. We have the 1-year and 5-year ACS PUMs through microdata access. We also have a variety of current population surveys on the site as well. So you have the current population survey annual social and economic supplement. We also have the current population survey basic monthly, and then some selected supplements that are listed here on the slide. We are continuing to migrate additional supplements from the current population survey. So we recommend, if you visit the link at the bottom of this slide, it walks through the current migration status. If those data are not available on microdata access, it will direct you to the links where you can download those files and work with them using your own statistical software. And we also have linked here at the bottom of this slide, it goes to an FAQ that provides the current available data sets on Microdata Access. So we continue to update that as more data sets become available on the site. One of the limitations we mentioned earlier of microdata is you are limited to higher level geographies. From the American Community Survey, you can get the data down to the state level, as well as public use microdata areas. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. And for the current population survey, you're primarily getting that data down to the state level as well. There are some selected counties in the current population survey ASEC supplement, but it's not comprehensive. So what are public use microdata areas? If you're not familiar with them already, they are defined areas with about 100,000 people or more, and they are based on population size. So on the right-hand side of the screen, what this means in states that are densely populated, such as Wyoming, those PUMA areas are going to cover larger land area. And if you're looking at densely populated areas, such as in the Northeast, as you can see in the screenshot below, those public use microdata area boundaries shown in blue are much smaller in terms of the land area because they're all based on population size. PUMAs can be used to identify many cities and metropolitan areas of 100,000 people or more, but not all of them. They are unique within each state. So there's a 5-digit PUMA code. When you combine that with the state code, that gives you a unique area. PUMAs nest within states, so they fit neatly in the state boundaries, and they comprehensively cover the entire nation, and they're redefined after each decennial census. The most recent PUMAs are based on census tracts and counties as the building blocks. So what does this look like? On the left-hand side, you can see an example where there are 3 public use microdata areas that can be added together to equal the boundaries of Orleans Parish, which is the county equivalent, or the city of New Orleans. They share the same boundaries. So when you add data for PUMA, those 3 PUMAs, you'll be getting data for the city of New Orleans. For counties or county equivalents with smaller population size, on the right-hand side of the screen, you see an example where there's a single PUMA that covers 3 county equivalents, St. James, St. John the Baptist, and St. Charles parishes. We make it easy to select PUMAs in Microdata Access. We'll show this in one of the examples, but it's very similar selection screen, as you can see on the right-hand side, where you'll choose the geographic level, choose your state, and then choose the PUMA based on their labels rather than the codes. And if you'd like to learn more about PUMAs, one of the resources that we recommend, it's called TigerWeb. While we don't have time to show you a demonstration of this tool today, we did want to provide a link. What I love about TigerWeb is that you can turn on multiple layers at once. So if you're not familiar with PUMAs at all, you can go to this web application, turn on the layer for PUMA, and then turn on the layer for the other area that you're interested in, such as place or county, and you can see how well or not well the PUMAs may or may not align with the area that you're interested in getting data for. So with that background information, let's dive right into the Microdata Access tool. We're going to walk through 3 different examples, and each example is going to walk through some basic skills, and we'll add on additional skills with each example that are progressively more advanced and give you a sense of the functionality that you'll need to work through the site in a variety of situations that you'll be interested in creating custom tables for. To get started, we'll look at work from home by detailed industry within the professional, scientific, management, and administrative and waste management services in the state of New York based on the American Community Survey. Before we get started, we always want to make sure that we go to the pre-made table and see if there's something that already provides the data that we're looking for. In this case, the closest example we found is B08126. You can see that this provides data for work from home, and it gives us 14 high-level industries here to choose from. So we can see that there are approximately 109,278 people in New York working from home based on the 2019 American Community Survey in the Professional, Scientific, Management, and Administrative and Waste Management Services. What if we want this for more detailed subcategories within this industry? That would be a good example to use microdata access. So let's go ahead and navigate to the site here. We do recommend using Google Chrome, and you'll just go to data.census.gov/MDAT and press enter. This is going to take us to the landing page here. And right off the bat, you'll have a couple of drop-down menus. The very first option allows you to select your data set. I'll leave it at the default, American Community Survey, 1-year estimates, public use microdata sample. When you're clicked into a data set, it will give you the most recent available vintage. You can also click and choose an earlier vintage if you're interested in that. I want the most recent data, so I'm going to choose ACS 1-year estimates 2019. You'll click Next in the lower right when you're ready to continue with that selection. From here, you'll notice there are a few different tabs at the top. We'll work through each one progressively, starting with the variables that we're interested in. For this data set, you can see that there are a total of 510 variables to choose from. We wanted work from home by detailed industry. My favorite way to go about searching, if I'm not familiar with the variables at all, is to click into the underneath where it says label and type in a keyword. So I usually go for just a single keyword. It is looking for an exact text match within that label, so less is more in terms of finding a match in the label. I go ahead and type in work because I'm interested in people who work from home, and then we'll read the variable names and descriptions in our results. So I can see right off the bat there are some about time people arrive or depart for work, how long it takes them to get there. And as I scroll through this list, you'll just carefully read the different labels until you see something that is of interest to you. When I get towards the bottom in this particular example, I can see JWTRNS, means of transportation to work. The number 13 means that there are 13 categories in this response. And once you see something that piques your interest that you think you may be interested in selecting, you'll just click on the right-hand side where it says Details, and that will expand the options. So now we can see that if we choose this variable, a value of 0 refers to people that aren't in the universe. They're either not in the labor force, aren't of the age for this particular variable. Then you start scrolling down and see the different detailed ways that people get to work. And then you'll see an option 11, that value refers to people worked from home. So this definitely has the category of data that I'm interested in. So once we've narrowed that down, we'll just click on the left-hand side, the checkbox, in order to select that. Once you check the box, you'll notice at the top-hand side where it says Data Cart, it went from 0 to 1. So that tells us we have one variable in our data cart. Now we wanted this broken out by industry, so once we're ready to start searching for our next variable, we'll just delete where it says work and then type in our next keyword. Here I'm going to type in industry. There are two options to choose from. I'm just going to look at the first one. It shows there are 271 detailed industries in this variable. I can click on details and scroll down, and I can see that they are categorized similar to how we saw on the table. So when we scroll through this list, you'll eventually see once we get down to something that says PRS, those are the codes that can be used to aggregate that one line that we saw in the table for professional management scientific industries. Here we get more detailed industries. You can look at breakout of legal services, accounting, tax preparation, bookkeeping, and payroll services, and much more. So we're going to select this variable. I'll check the checkbox on the left-hand side next to INDP, then add it to our data cart. Once we've selected all the variables, we'll just proceed to the next step by clicking Select Geographies at the top tab. We wanted this data for the state of New York, so I'll click on State and then scroll to New York. Very similar to the pre-made tables on data.census.gov, you're looking for a checkbox as a final selection, so we check the box for New York, and we see it's been added as a selected geography. Once we've selected our geography, we'll click on Data Cart. So this is where we can narrow down. In this case, we're going to restrict the population that our table represents, which is a kind of layman's way to say that we're going to restrict the table universe if you're looking for the formal technical language for what we're doing here. If we wanted a very detailed table, we could look at all of the 13 different ways people get to work and cross that out by the 271 industries. That would give us a very, very detailed table. In this case, I'm only interested in people who work from home. So the first thing I'll want to do is restrict the set of responses that are included in our universe. So with the JWTRNS variable for means of transportation to work, when you want to restrict the universe, I'll just uncheck the box that says Include in Universe. That will deselect all of the options, and then I'll simply scroll through and check the option that I want to keep. So I want data for people that worked from home. I'll deselect all the options and choose Worked from Home. The next thing we'll do is narrow down to only the detailed industries that we're interested in. Here I'm going to click on the left where it says INDP. This will give us all of the available categories, the 271 categories for detailed industry. And just like before, I'll uncheck the box, or I'll check the box at the top to deselect all of the options. And then I'll scroll through the list and check the ones that I'm interested in keeping. Again, I wanted to look at detailed professional, scientific, and management occupations, so I'm just going to check these 19 boxes that begin with PRS. And that's going to allow me to keep those and put them in my table. So once you've restricted the values of the variables to those that you're interested in, the next step is to click Table Layout at the top. I'm just going to zoom out here a little bit so you all can see the total context better. What I like to do with the table layout, you can adjust where the variables appear in the table. And the nice thing about the Table Layout tab is it's not trying to calculate and feed that information in your table, so it's a really quick way to just play around with how you want things to appear in the table without having to wait for everything to pull the data and make the calculations. The first thing we'll do, just my personal preference, is the geographies and ACS data tables tend to appear in the columns. So what I like to do is left-click, hold, and drag selected geographies to columns. And once you see it appear under columns, you'll see that New York in our table preview is showing in the column. The next thing that I'll do is I see that I have the detailed occupation in the rows, INDP in the row, and then there's this worked from home. So I can go ahead and plop work from home in the rows if I wanted to, and I can change the order depending on how I want it to appear in the table. Anything that's in the columns and the rows means that it's going to show in your table, and it's cross-tabulating everything by default. So it doesn't matter a whole lot whether you decide to put it in the column or the rows. It's just a matter of preference. The other thing that you can do is maybe I don't need this repeating label worked from home over and over and over again in my table, and I say, hey, I just want to get that clutter out of my table. I can move JWTRNS to not on table. This is still going to restrict the universe so that my table only gives me data for people that work from home, but it's not going to label it in my table row or the column because it's not in the column or row. So again, different ways to play around with it, but it's going to cross-tabulate it by default. You're going to get the same set of estimates. It's just going to be in a different cosmetic view on the table. Once you're happy with your table layout, on the lower right-hand side, there's a button that says View Table. I'll click that. And now we get our data. Right at the top, we can see the weight. It's pulled the PUMS person level weight by default. And then we can scroll down and see, as an example, in the legal services industry in New York, based on the 2019 American Community Survey, there were 8,363 people estimated working from home in that industry. You can see just above this, the universe is restricted to show data just for the state of New York. It's also restricted for those 19 detailed industries we selected. And it's restricted the universe to only reflect data for people who worked from home. Once you're in this full table view, one thing you can do is click the column header, and that will sort the information in ascending or descending order. So if we click it a couple times, we can see in New York, for the industries we selected, computer systems design and related services had the highest number of workers working from home. One other option we wanted to show you here is the weighting. It has pulled the PUMS person weight by default. And since the data reflects the total number of people, this is the right weight that we would want it to pull. One thing you may be interested in is switching to the unweighted counts. When you switch to unweighted counts, it will show you for those estimates that we just saw that reflected data representing people in New York. It was based on the unweighted counts for this number of responses. So you'll want to check the unweighted counts, and if you feel like the estimates are not being generated based on a high enough set of responses for you, one thing you can do to increase that would be to switch from the ACS 1-year to the ACS 5-year estimates. The last thing I wanted to show in this example is how you can save the results. Once you've gone through all these steps, I'm just going to change it back to the weighted table. Then we'll click Download Share in the upper right. One option is to look at the results in a CSV file in Excel. If you want to look at the table results, you'll click Download Table View, check the box. If you wanted the underlying set of microdata or individual responses, you could extract the raw data as well. I'm just going to download the table view, click the Download button, and then open up that exported file. And what we see here is the same information that we saw on screen. It even has the legal services was the example of the line that we looked at, 8,363, as well as the other detailed industries we selected. Another option to save the information is where it says Copy Bookmark. You can also just simply copy the URL in your address bar and save it for later once you share it with a colleague or open it up. You'll load it into your tab. It may pause at the landing screen for a moment or two. For certain tables that are more complex, it may pause longer. Give it a minute, and then eventually it will get back to this table display, and you'll see the same estimates that we saw earlier without having to go through all the steps to recreate it. Moving on to our second example, we're going to look at poverty for the population 40 years and over in the United States based on the current population survey. This example is going to allow us to practice again many of the skills we just looked at earlier. It's also going to give us the opportunity to show you how to recode continuous variable using a manual process. Of course, before we go into this example, we would have checked the pre-made table. This is the closest pre-made table that provides us data related to what we're looking for. It gives us poverty broken out by age, but we wanted poverty data for single year of age. This provides poverty for selected age groups. So we wouldn't be able to see, or we don't want, excuse me, we were doing 40 and over. So this gives us, you can see here, it's not 40 or over, it's 35 to 44 years old. It gives pre-made categories. So if those categories, for whatever reason, don't meet your needs, you can use Microdata Access to create your own estimates. So we're going to look at poverty for the population 40 and over in the United States. Going back to the site here, you'll click in the upper left where it says Microdata. That's going to take you back to the main page. Clear out all of your selections and start you fresh. We wanted to use the current population survey. In this case, we're going to use the current population survey annual social and economic March supplement. And the most recent vintage is March 2020. So we'll keep that and click next in the lower right. Now, if you already know the variable name that you need offhand, another way you can search is by name. So clicking directly underneath where it says variable, I know the variable for poverty of people is PERLIS. So I type in PERLIS. It brings up that match. I can verify this is the variable I want by clicking details and see that this gives us data for people not in the poverty universe, below poverty, people being close to poverty but not quite in poverty, and then people who are above poverty. So this is the variable I want. I want people below poverty, so I'm going to check the box next to PERLIS on the left. Then I'm going to search for my next variable, deleting where it says PERLIS, and then typing in the variable A_AGE for age. Now I'll click on details just to see what I'm going to be getting from this variable. It gives me age 0 to age 85. And that age 85 is top coded, so that means that anyone who is above age 85 would show up as age 85 in the PUM. So it certainly captures everyone's age, just kind of top coding that age at 85. I'll check the box next to age and notice the top of my screen in orange. It tells me it's a continuous variable and that I can only use it if I create a recode. Now we have both of our variables. We'll click on Select Geographies. We wanted data for the United States, so I don't need to do anything here. If I don't select a geography, the default will be to give me data for the U.S. Then I'll click Data Cart. Now earlier we showed you how you could use the data cart to limit the categories that were already pre-made that you wanted to include in your table. So we limited our universe by deselecting some of the categories checkboxes. In this case, because we're working with a continuous variable, it's more flexible, and we actually need to create our own categories or recode the variable so that we can use it in our table. So what we'll do for A_age, it gives us all of the available options. We'll click Create Custom Group. So I'm going to create a category for people age 0 to 39 and then a category for age 40 plus. In the group label, you can type whatever you want it to show in the row of your table. So if I type in, I love the Census Bureau, that's what would appear in the table. You probably want to type in something that will make sense. Just know that whatever you're typing in this box, you'll also want to make sure, very important underneath it, is that you make sure it reflects the values that you want to include. So we want to include value 0. and we don't want it to go up to age 85, we want it to go up to 39. So that's the important part that actually gives you the accurate data. The group label is just what appears in your table display. These both match and make sense, so I'm going to click Save Group. This gives me data for people age 0 to 39, and I can see that category here on the next screen. The other thing that is at the top, all of the other values that I haven't manually categorized are lumped together in something called Not Elsewhere Classified. I'm going to click on Edit Group, and here I can see the values included in this are people age 40 to the top code of age 85. So this captures data for people age 40 and up. I'm going to change the label from Not Elsewhere Classified to 40 plus, just so that I know what I'm looking at when I go to the table view. Then click Save Group in the lower right. Now we have our two categories. We'll click on Table Layout, just like before. And here we can make some edits. So right now it's giving us data just for poverty, and it has the age recode that we just created, those special categories as not in table. That could be used to restrict the universe, but since we included all ages in both of those categories, it's not restricting the universe right now. We want that data to actually show in the table, and we want to see the breakout for 0 to 39 and 40 plus. So you just drag, hold, and move that from not on table to rows or columns. Here I'm going to put it in the rows. And we can see this table preview showing us we're going to get data for different poverty categories. I'm interested in this category for below poverty level and the two age categories we just created. The last step is when you're working with continuous variables, you will have more options as to whether you want the system to give you an average or a count reflecting the total number of people for this table. I want the count, so I'm going to change value in table cells from average to count. Then click View Table in the lower right. Just like before, the system has applied the most appropriate weight. Here we're looking at the person level weight, which makes sense because we're looking at the total number of people in poverty. The default universe for the United States, and we can see in these results that if you wanted poverty for people age 40 and over in the United States, the estimate from the current population survey was 13,322,538. Moving on to our last example here, we're going to look at health insurance by single year of age in San Francisco public use microdata areas based on the American Community Survey. This example is going to give us an opportunity to show you how you can recode and create categories in bulk using the auto group function. And it's also going to give us an opportunity just to select some of those PUMAs. Before we do this, we would check the pre-made table. This is the closest pre-made table that provides data that we're looking for. It gives health insurance data, but it doesn't give us the single year of age. It gives us data for population under 6 years and 6 to 18 years. So a good use case to use Microdata Access. We'll navigate back to the live site. Just like before, we'll click Microdata in the upper left, clear everything out, and start as fresh. We wanted to use the American Community Survey. I'm going to use the 1 year and the most recent vintage and click Next in the lower right. And I'm going to use the label again to search for my variable. Again, you just want a keyword. I'm going to type in health. And I can see, just reading the labels, there's some detailed options. And there's something generic called Health Insurance Coverage Recode. Looks like that could be something I'm interested in looking what those recodes or categories are. So I'll click Details on the right and see that it provides data for people with health insurance coverage and people without health insurance coverage. So this is what I want, no health coverage. I'll check the box next to HighCode to select that variable and add it to my data cart. Then I'll go ahead and delete health, type in age, and see age P gives data for age, and I'll always want to click the details just to verify this is what I want. This particular variable provides data for people under 1 year old and for people 1 to 99 years old, with 99 being the top coded value. Once I check the box, just like before, in CPS, this variable is also a continuous variable, and it tells us that we need to create our own recodes or categories in order to use it. I have health insurance and I have age, so I'll click Select Geographies at the top. I wanted public use microdata areas within San Francisco County, so I'll choose Puma, California, and then it gives you the label for the different public use microdata areas. The state of California defines their Pumas based on county, and they label them with the county name, and this panel is organized alphabetically. So it's really a good way if you did want the Pumas in your county. They're labeled pretty well in terms of California. We can click on the 7 public use microdata areas for San Francisco County, and you'll scroll down. You'll see all 7 of them are included in our selection. Then we'll move to Data Cart. So just like before, we have a continuous variable. We need to create a custom group. So first I'm going to click Create Custom Group. So I wanted health insurance by single year of age. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull out this category for under 1 year old. Just check the box next to it. So this tells the system this category, I want data for people under 1 year old. And so I know what this means on my table. I'm going to type under 1 year. You'll click Save Group once you're happy with it. So it gives us that manual recode we just created and lumps everything else into Not Elsewhere Classified. We could continue to click Edit Group one by one and do this for the other ages 1 to 17. If you want a way to do this in bulk, there's the Auto Group button at the top. So click on Auto Group, and then we tell the system we want to start at age 1, and we want to end at age 17, and you can use this auto group anytime you want equal intervals in the groups you are trying to create. So since I want single year of age, I want separate categories for each individual age. I'll leave groups of at 1 and click auto group. So going through this process with just those couple of clicks, I was able to tell the system that I wanted data for each of these categories individually from age 1 to age 17. And then at the top, of course, are the other values that we haven't specified into any category. I'll click Edit Group and just type 18 plus so I know what this data represents, and click Save Group. Once we've made the edits to the variables, we'll click on Table Layout, and you'll make your adjustment. Again, I like to generally put the geography in the column and move my data points to the rows. So I'm going to put health insurance coverage and then age. So I can see I'll be getting data for folks with health insurance coverage. I'll get that data for the population 18 and over, and then for the single year of age from 0 to 17. We'll go ahead and click on View Table. It's pulled in the appropriate PUMS person weight. And I didn't change this to count on the last screen, just in case you ever forget to change it on the table layout screen. This is giving us average of age within each of these categories. So if you forget to make that step, it'll be pretty apparent once you get to the table view and we have the values in table cells option, to where we can tell the system, I don't want you to provide me average of age, I want you to provide me counts for the categories I specified. Change it to count and we start getting data that seems like it makes sense to us. We get the 7 geographies here as you scroll to the right of the table if you wanted this data for individual PUMAs, or you can look at the left and get the totals. So we can see in this example that there were 7,231 people under age 1 that have health insurance in San Francisco County, and then you can look at this for the other age categories with health insurance and without health insurance. And with that demonstration, I wanted to turn it back over to my colleague Deb before we start opening it up for questions.
Great. Thank you, Tyson. All right, so in a few minutes, we will begin our live question and answer session. First, I would like to ask that everyone spare a quick 3 minutes to fill out the evaluation for our webinar today. And you can do so now using the link that we're about to send through the chat. And you can just fill that out while you're listening to the Q&A session, or you can access the survey through the pop-up window that comes up on your screen once you exit the WebEx event. You know how much we value your feedback for these webinars because, among many things, they inform us on how we can improve upon our sessions and what topics we choose to cover in future webinars. So please take a moment to fill that out. And then one final reminder, please note that we will only be addressing questions that pertain specifically to today's topic. If you have questions about navigating the main data.census.gov platform or on decennial census data releases, please feel free to reach out to one of the 2 email inboxes that are listed here on this slide. If you are a member of the public, please feel free to reach out to the Center for Enterprise Dissemination, and members of the media may contact the Public Information Office. And with that, operator, can you please open up the lines for questions?
Certainly. If you would like to ask your question at this time, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. Remember to only record your first and last name. Your name is required to announce your question. If you would like to withdraw your question at any time, you may press *2. One moment for the first question.
Great, thank you. And as we're waiting for the first questions to come in, one thing we wanted to remind you all is that what we showed today is a way that you can go about exploring statistics. Just like data.census.gov, the microdata access tool is something that we are continuously improving. So we develop, make improvements, and push those out live every couple of months. Please tell us how we can make the site work better for you by emailing us at cedsci.feedback@census.gov. And we also showed today, what we could cover during this webinar time, but we have a variety of educational resources for you to learn more about this topic in a variety of formats, whether you wanted short videos, the full-length recorded webinars on this topic and other related topics, as well as PDFs and flyers with step-by-step instructions and screenshots. To get to this educational resource for data.census.gov, simply visit the link in the upper left or click the Help button on the data.census.gov landing page. And do we have any questions in queue?
At this time, we have no questions in queue. As a reminder, you may press *1 on your telephone keypad.
And as we're waiting for questions to come in, we wanted to let you know about another educational resource that the Census Bureau offers. It's the Data Dissemination and Training on census.gov/academy. That is the centralized training hub for the Census Bureau, where you will find education and training resources not only on data.census.gov, but on other tools and resources from across the Census Bureau. They also provide data on a variety of topics and surveys and programs. So we definitely recommend checking out census.gov/academy. Another learning opportunity from this particular resource is the Data Dissemination Specialist. If you're interested in getting local or specialized training, we have data dissemination specialists that are located throughout the country that cover your local area. and you can request the training free of charge. Just email us at census.askdata@census.gov or 1-844-ASK-DATA.
And we do have a person in the queue. Claudia Thomas, your line is open.
Thank you, and great presentation. I plan to take full advantage of this site. I've actually scanned through the site and the user guide that you sent, but I don't see information, I'm probably missing it, about how we would save any of the queries that we develop. Is that possible?
Yeah, in terms of like the table results after you go through the table, is that what you're referencing?
Yeah, so if you want to keep reusing one that you've built, is there a way to save that so you can go right back to it instead of rebuilding?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually going to click, when you go to the table on the upper right, there's the download share.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of options here, so I want to take a little bit of time just to walk through these a little more fully. We showed how you can, download the table and open it up in Excel.
Yeah, which I've done.
Okay, and then you can copy the URL. You can click the copy bookmark here, or you can copy it from the address bar. And then whenever you go to open that up in the future, if you saved it and you click on it, it's going to pause at the landing page, and then it's going to take you exactly where we were before. So in this URL, it saves your geography selection, your variable selection, any universe limitations or recodes that you've done. It's all reflected in this pretty lengthy URL. So that's the best way to go about saving it. Did that answer your primary concern?
Yeah, that may not be intuitive, but now I know I'll just save those as favorites, put them in a folder, and that'll be the way I'll be able to go back to them. Maybe I'll even build some tiny URLs so they're not so long. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then just while I'm on this page, just some other functionality that is on this in the download share for folks that are interested in microdata with the API. There are links here that would give you the API results in terms of the raw data. For the API tabulate query, this gives you the results from the API in terms of the table that we saw. It was in a nice display on data.census.gov. This is the application programming interface that powers that and is also publicly available. Operator, may we take the next question?
Certainly. Once again, if you do have a question, you may press star 1 on your telephone keypad.
And as we wait for folks that have any additional questions, wanted to reiterate the application programming interface that we just mentioned. It is what is powering data.census.gov, and that's true of the pre-made tables that you see on data.census.gov, as well as the microdata access tool. The API provides you those results in terms of the raw data or those tables that you make custom tables. You can learn more about the API by visiting the link on this slide. We have a user guide as well as short videos, webinars, and a flyer.
We have no further questions at this time.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. If there aren't any other questions coming through, we just wanted to thank you so much for tuning into the webinar today. We look forward to having additional training opportunities. And if you haven't taken a moment to do the webinar evaluation, just another reminder to please complete that so we can continue to make these useful to you and incorporate your feedback. Thank you so much.
This will conclude today's conference. All parties may disconnect at this time.